I actually had other plans for the daily cancellation today, better plans, you might even say. But then I saw this clip of Nikki Haley all over Twitter. And yes, I will keep calling it Twitter until the day I die, just like the football team in Washington will always be the Redskins. The clip is from an interview Haley recently did with NBC News, where she was asked about some of her recent comments about race, which the media has construed as racist. And this really shows you already how meaningless the racism charge is from the media. Like, if they can even make Nikki Haley into a far-right Nazi racist, then they can do it to anyone. And in this case, the NBC reporters were very concerned that Haley had, in recent days, tried to earn an acquittal on the racism charges by pointing out that she has black friends. And NBC informs her that using the "I have black friends" excuse is a trope, which is itself racist. Now, I've said before that the only problem with using the "I have black friends" excuse as a defense against racism is that you are defending yourself against a racism accusation in the first place. To defend yourself in the first place is to already lose. The minute you grovel to these people and try to prove your anti-racism credentials, they own you. That's why the only appropriate response when someone on the left calls you racist is to look them in the eyes and say, "I don't care that you think that of me." You aren't agreeing that you're racist, because you aren't, but you also aren't collapsing on the ground and begging for their pardon and forgiveness. Instead, you're letting them know that their opinion of you and the labels they put on you mean nothing to you, and they have no power over you. Now, all that said, even if you shouldn't be allowing yourself to be put on the defense in the first place, it's also the case that, objectively speaking, "I have black friends" is a great defense against a racism accusation. Somebody who has black friends is almost certainly not racist against black people. In fact, friendship with another human being entails, by definition, that you do not think that they are inferior to you based on race or any other factor outside of their control, because if you do think that, then they're not your friend. So if someone has black friends, they aren't racist against black people. That's a pretty good indication. The idea that this is somehow an illegitimate defense or somehow irrelevant to the racism question entirely is totally absurd, which is something that Nikki Haley could have pointed out in this exchange, but instead she went this route.
We were the only Indian family in our small southern town. I was teased every day for being brown. So anyone that wants to question it can go back and look at what I've said on how hard it was to grow up in the Deep South as a brown girl. Anybody can look at my record and see when Walter Scott was shot down by a dirty cop, how I made sure that the Walter Scott family didn't suffer because we put the first body camera bill in the country in place. Anybody can look at the fact that when we had 9 amazing souls die in Mother Emanuel Church, I did something that no Republican or Democrat ever wanted to touch, which was call for the Confederate flag to come down, because it would take 2/3 of the House and Senate and was an impossible feat. I don't know what you're implying with that, but what I will tell you is saying that I had black friends is a source of pride. Saying that I had white friends is a source of pride. If you want to know what it was like growing up, I was disqualified from a beauty pageant because I wasn't white or black, because they didn't know where to put me.
Okay, let's just slow down here and take this one at a time. First of all, just to address the elephant in the room here, Nikki Haley is not really brown, or at least if she is brown, she's a very light shade of it. But technically, we're all shades of brown from a color spectrum perspective. I've never seen a literal white person. Like, there are no people with skin pigment the same shade as a sheet of computer paper. So if Nikki Haley's brown, she's only brown in the sense that any white person is brown. I'm not doubting that Haley's family is really from India. They are. But the point is that if she doesn't tell you she's brown, you would never know. In fact, like most people, I didn't find out until this election cycle that Haley is Indian. And when I found out, like most people, I said, "What? Nikki Haley isn't white?" And I had to go check Wikipedia. And sure enough, her family's from India. I had no idea. All that to say, her stories of anti-brown persecution strain credulity from the start. And what are the stories? Well, she says that she was disqualified from a beauty pageant for being brown. We're supposed to believe that way, way back in the ancient times of the 1980s, South Carolina's beauty pageant circuit had never encountered anyone who hailed from Asia or anywhere in the Middle East or anywhere in South or Central America. So they saw Nikki's slightly brownish skin and their minds were blown. They didn't know what to do. Like they looked at her and they said, "Wait a minute, I've heard of black people, I've heard of white people, but what is this? They make people in this color act. What do we do here? They hit a button, set off an alarm. It was a total panic. It was pandemonium. This is what the beauty pageant official apparently said to Nikki sometime in the early 1980s. I must confess that I find that somewhat difficult to believe. In fact, it sounds very similar to the single woman who informs you that men aren't interested in her because they are intimidated by her staggering beauty. It sounds like the most desperate cope of all time. I mean, there are, after all, other more obvious reasons why men may not be interested in you, just as there are other more obvious reasons why you might have been disqualified from a beauty pageant, but I guess we'll never know. I mean, it is possible that beauty pageants in South Carolina 40 years ago had a policy that only people from Africa, Europe, or North America were allowed to participate. It's possible that black and white people were teaming up together to discriminate against Asians. That's a team we don't see very often. Like that's an assortment, a team we don't see very often. I wasn't there. I can't say for sure. What I can say for sure, though, is that there is simply no way Nikki Haley was teased every day for being brown, as she claims. I've never heard anyone being teased for being brown ever in my entire life. I'm sure it's happened at various points in American history, but the claim that she, as someone who barely even qualifies as brown, was teased on a daily basis her entire childhood because of her brownness is just impossible to believe. If it was true, I would say it's not the worst thing in the world. Like, every kid is going to be teased for something, and if they choose your maybe very slightly darker skin tone as the subject of ridicule, that's not too terrible, all things considered. I mean, it's better than being called ugly or fat or a loser or whatever. Every kid gets picked on by someone for something. It's an unfortunate reality of growing up, especially in the school system. And none of it should be happening. Like, no one should be getting teased because they have brown skin, if that's even happening. I don't even know what that would sound like. But of all the things you could be teased for, I'm not sure why that would be any worse than any of the other horrible things that kids are said and say to each other. But that's assuming that this really happened, which it probably didn't. At least not at the rate and frequency Nikki is claiming here. But whether it happened or not, or however often it did happen, if it happened at all, none of that matters. Are you struggling with back taxes? Do you have unfiled returns this year? The IRS is escalating collections by adding 20,000 new agents during these challenging times. Your best defense is to use Tax Network USA. With over 14 years of experience, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in back taxes. They specialize in negotiating with the IRS and aim to reduce your debt significantly. Tax Network USA doesn't just negotiate. They protect your assets from IRS seizures and manage your yearly returns for ongoing compliance. Importantly, they are licensed to help with all state tax issues, regardless of where you live in the U.S. Seize control of your financial future now and don't let tax issues overpower you. Contact Tax Network USA for immediate relief and expert guidance. Call 1-800-245-6000 or visit tnusa.com/Walsh. Turn to Tax Network USA and find your path to financial peace of mind. That's tnusa.com/Walsh. First of all, if you are a grown adult trying to gain sympathy based on what your elementary school peers said to you, no matter what they said to you, no matter how rude they were, then you are pathetic. It is just not acceptable to be a 50-year-old adult trying to earn pity points from what some alleged schoolyard bully teased you about 40 years ago. And the only time it's okay for an adult to bring up the grade school bullying they suffered is if they're talking to a child and trying to encourage a child by saying, I went through it, I turned out fine, you'll be okay. Like, in that context, you'll be excused for dredging up those memories, but to bring it up to other adults in an on-camera interview, no less, in a desperate attempt to make yourself seem sympathetic, is just embarrassing on every possible level. And it's all for nothing in the end anyway, because you cannot play the victim game against the left and win. This is their game. They own it. They own the stadium. They run the league. They're paying the refs. It's like trying to beat the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs. The whole thing is rigged. You can't win. You aren't allowed to. I'm the biggest victim, so I'm right is a move the left invented. You can't use it against them. Why can't you use it against them? Because they could just say, that doesn't count when you do it. What do you mean it doesn't count? Well, this is our game. We made it up. It's like, have you ever tried to play a game with like a child that a child has invented? Have you ever, with my kids, Oh, play this game, Daddy. What's the game? We made it up. And I quickly discovered that whatever we're doing in this game, all the rules are designed just to make sure that somehow they win and I don't win. And this is exactly how it works on the left. So you can't win. And why would you want to? Have some self-respect, have some dignity, be a grown-up. If they try to lead you into a conversation like this, just look at them and say, you don't really think I'm racist. This is just a game you're playing. But even if you do think it, I don't care. I'm not here to justify myself to you. Now ask me about something that actually matters or this conversation is over. That's all you have to say. Can you imagine if Nikki Haley had said that? Like, even I would have to, I would do 15 minutes praising her just for that alone. It would be that simple. But Republicans like Nikki Haley are just not capable of it, which is why she is today, once again, and forever, canceled. Hey, YouTube, thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like access to my full show with no ads, you should go to dailywire.com and use promo code Walsh to get 2 months free on all annual plans. See you there.